Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody, on this sort of rainy but not quite as drizzly looking day as yesterday. So Friday, November the 14th, halfway through the month already, for the special council budget meeting. And I'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, Silks and Snayaks people, and is home to the Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honor their connection to the land and rivers and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. Councillor, just for the record, Councillor Pinero is away on business, and I believe Councillor Page is in Vancouver at UBCM activities. So we're short those two councillors, but they're doing other work that needs to be done. So there's no late items. If I could have an adoption of the agenda as present, that's moved by Councillor Lockenberg, second by Councillor Woodward. All those in favor, and that carries. We have some minutes of previous meetings. So we have the special meetings of June 17th, June 23rd, and October the 21st, and the public hearing meetings of April 16th and June 23rd. Do I have a mover?
Move.
Councillor Woodward, do I have a seconder? Councillor Tate. Councillors, errors or omissions? Councillor Payne.
I just want to pull something out and see if I'm misguided here, but on the 23rd, the special meeting, June 23rd, one of the factors in council's decision-making was that listed here as a bullet point. Housing is a provincial and federal government issue that has been left to local governments to figure out. Is that a factor in our decision? Because I'm not.
Where's that?
I agree with that.
Oh, housing.
It's the end of, bottom of page, well, I guess the top of page 2. So it's certainly something that municipal governments have become more involved in. But I don't know that the provincial and federal governments have left us to figure it out. I think that's not a partnering type language with our other levels of government. I don't know if that's important, but that's the one thing that came to me.
We can strike that out.
Wait, sorry.
It says housing is a provincial and federal government issue that has been left to local governments to figure out.
I'm in the wrong agenda. That's why I'm lost.
June the
Provincial
23rd
Council,
adoption.
June 23rd.
Yeah.
The second one down.
It was in relation to the OCP
OCP,
amendment for
yeah.
French Street.
Oh, I'm sure I've said that more than once. You can leave that in there. Put my name next to it if you want.
Okay. There you go.
Thanks for noting.
Any other errors or omissions, Councillor Payne?
No, I didn't. That was the one thing that seemed discordant to me, but.
No problem. I'll take credit for that one.
Okay. So we moved and seconded. All those in favor? And that carries. Councillor Payne, are you opposed or?
No.
Okay. You're very good at putting your hand up, so I just had to ask. Item number 6, recommendations from staff, and we're starting off with the third quarter financial update. So that is going to go to Amy. Is going to take us through that today. Well, you didn't see him point at you behind your head, so there you go. Over to you. And we must have some slides here for that.
Sorry.
So we don't have the slides.
I think you should.
Yes.
They came yesterday, I think. I misunderstood.
In an email or on the?
The budget is on, yeah, that came on an email.
So you
This
sent
presentation.
one that was just the budget ones, and then you probably sent a second one that was this, is that right?
No, so the budget, the quarter 3 update came through on email, and the rest are on the agenda package, on your agenda notes.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
I don't see the Q3 one, sorry.
I do not see it, so maybe you could direct me to the time.
I know that I saw an email that said that Q3 was going to come later in the day because it wasn't quite ready.
That's the last email I saw.
That was the last email that I had. But
That could have been because I meant to and didn't send it, sorry.
Send it out.
Yeah.
Amy, you're in the middle of it?
All right, that was quick.
So good.
Nice work. I'd still be opening my email.
It's like God is 2 FA.
So So there's two separate presentations?
One presentation and then just additional
Okay,
information if you want to put.
thank you.
So we'll start looking at revenue, just compared to budget. We've got the blue bars as this year's year to date. The light blue individual line is the budget, and then the gray being what we were at the same time last year. So just a few comments on each slide as usual. Taxes have increased from prior year, just to reflect that 8.1% tax increase and 1.5% from new construction. Other revenue we're forecasting to be over budget just due to the increase in water and wastewater utility connection charges that we've had this year, as well as partially because of the increase of airport fees. Nelson Hydro sales have increased 7% from prior year due to the rate increase and also based on actual consumption throughout the year. Switching over to look at where we're at year to date compared to the total budget for the year. Again, our current
Sorry,
year is
Amy, transit is kind of small there, but how are we doing with transit?
Transit, we are forecasting to be on budget for revenue portion. It's just slightly below the 75%, but we see those waves kind of come and go as we hit the
Better on this slide.
Yeah, you can see it better on the
Yeah,
slide.
the other slide.
Which is why we like showing both of them. It kind of the other one shows the magnitude of each budget, whereas this kind of gives you the where we're in each of them. Sale of service, parking meter revenue is up 16%. Youth center fees are up 23%. We did have that increase to fees earlier this year, and garbage fees are up 22% as per our budgeted annual increase.
Councilor Woodward?
Thank you. Cody, can you say that about
Parking meter revenue is up 16% last year, and so we had the increase from March of last year. So a portion of last year's revenue was at the lower rate, so that's primarily where it's coming from.
And, sorry, may I ask something? Is there any, like, are people using then do you think people are using more of the phone system and?
I think they are. You can see we get kind of little reports each month based on usage on how many people are using it, and it's got a steady stream up. We saw it in the summertime, I think, because of a lot of tourists.
Mm-hmm.
So we continue pushing that. And I think people are enjoying it.
Great. You can like be out and about tracking it,
Yeah.
exactly what time you have left.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
I have a question, please, Mr. Chair, since we're asking questions on bars. Going back to transit for a second, is this surprising given the reduced number of international students, or does it have something to do with those longer routes that are between cities not being within our realm? Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, I mean, the transit revenue is a bit funny because we switched over to that UMO system where it's more of like a pot of funds that we're sharing, and the revenue allocation is meant to keep everybody whole. That's why last year looks a little bit strange that it was low there. I think they were still working out some glitches with how that worked, and so we ended up with some months where we were getting a bunch of revenue from UMO, and then they had some adjustments where we had to give some back, and it was very odd. So I think this is more in line with, where we'd expected, but it's different than how we used to sell transit fares before, so it's kind of hard to compare. Yeah. It'd be a good question to ask
It's making a new
Bear
baseline.
and the drivers anecdotally too, like how are the buses as far as how full they are. I think so. I haven't heard anything from them on what they're seeing for number of folks on the buses, but I also haven't heard about people being left behind either.
Yeah, that was always the big one, was the left behinders that,
Yep.
as you got closer to the campus, that.
Conditional grants, the 2025 grant revenue includes all the funding for our major projects. So again, at the end of the year, we'll recognize those in line with capital projects. So we'll see that bump up. Water and sewer user fees have increased as budgeted, and that annual bill goes out at the beginning of the year. Nelson Hydro is forecasted to end the year on budget, an increase of 7% again due to that rate increase and based on actual consumption.
just before you move on there, on the taxation piece, like the Q3 update is kind of interesting because it almost is a good lead into when we start talking about next year's budget, because we get a good sense of how this year was going and what we can do for next year. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit when we get into the expense side. Taxation, every year in mid-November, BC Assessment gives us a bit of a preview of what they expect new construction revenue, that growth piece to be for next year. In the past 3-4 years, we've been bringing in about $200,000 a year in new revenue from growth. This year, when I saw the report and ran it, our numbers were around $50,000 for new taxation. So there's a bit of, I went back and forth with BC Assessment a bit on that one, and I think there's some errors in there to correct, but in general, I think it's going to be down from where it has been kind of in that post-COVID boom that we had. So just something to keep in mind that that revenue might be lower than what we've seen in the last couple of years.
So again, yeah, we like including this chart to see the magnitude of each expense line item. A friendly reminder for a couple of these groupings, we do these groupings because they match our financial statements. So protective services includes police, fire, and bylaw. Transportation relates to our public works. So that includes street maintenance, snow removal, etc. Environmental health services refers to our waste and organics. And public health and welfare relates to our cemetery services. All the other ones I think are pretty self-explanatory, but I know those ones can get a bit confusing. So looking at the percentage of where we're at today, or I guess at quarter 3 compared to the total budget, general government is forecasted to the end of the year under budget just due to some timing of large projects such as the Anderson Creek and capacity funding projects. We've got an overall increase from prior year due to the regional energy efficiency program that was expected. Overall, protective services are forecasted to end the year on budget, and we'll look in detail in a future slide on that one. Transit expenses are forecasted to come in slightly under budget.
Transportation?
Transit. Transit is forecasted to come in slightly under budget. The increase from prior year, of course, is due to the amalgamation of Kootenay Lake West service that started partially last year, April 1st, and the delay of the amalgamation in unions. Transportation services are also forecasted to be under budget, and part of that will depend on the snow clearing in December.
Councillor Payne.
I didn't hear you talk about the library. It seems low. Why?
Library also has some capital projects in there that will those get reported at the end of the year.
Okay.
So this is just relating to the operations side of it. So taking a closer look in protective services, both fire and police are trending in line with budget. The one-time cost-saving reductions we saw earlier in the year have been offset with overtime expenses in both departments. You'll recall from quarter 2, we like to look at parks and transportation kind of as a whole because they share the same crew members switching from snow removal and parks depending on the season and that timing of the change. Together we're trending under budget primarily due to snow removal. We had a light snow period this year. So we'll kind of wait to see how that works out for the rest of the year. So digging into the snow removal portion, looking at the last historical snow removal costs versus budgets, we've got January to June in blue at that bottom of the bars, April to December, or I guess the later you don't get snow in April, but maybe November,
Sure we
December
do.
in green-ish.
Snow in April.
And then we've forecasted for 2025 kind of where we think we might end up. And that red bar is where we budget each year. So for the last number of years, we've definitely been under budget with the exception of 2022 when we had a massive snowfall in January as well as in December. So when we look at 2026, because crew members are budgeted to be in snow removal, every time we come in under budget, it means that their time's being allocated somewhere else, whether it's parks or water. So we're going over budget in those departments. So 2026, we want to look at maybe reallocating some of those labor hours to the more appropriate spot. If we do happen to have a big snow year, that's fine, we have that resource to bring them back in and manage that. But it does help us with overall budgeting in the other departments so we don't go over.
I like that. I'm curious about just combining them so that you don't have to be like, oh, this. Is there any way, would that be useful for your time in a day and your time in a year?
I mean, we have to report on certain lines as far as, like certain categories of expenses as far as our requirements are with the province. So we do have to say how much do we spend on parks and recreation, how much do we spend on transportation. So do you want to try and line those ones up if we can? The interesting piece is the utilities side of things, because when we have our crews move, earlier away from snow removal, not a huge big deal thing with the parks, it's all funded by taxation, so it's just an explanation piece. But when they move into utilities early and start working in the water utility, doing capital work in there, that's when you'll see, okay, you've got over budget in the water utility, and that's funded by a different source of revenues, right? So one thing we might want to look at for 2026 is, do we reduce this snow removal budget? We've added quite a substantial capital plan for our crews already in water. They've got 2 big projects that they're going to be working on. So we have the budget there to be able to absorb that. Do we lower the budget of snow removal in operating? And if you do get one of those, 2022 type incidents happening, that's why we have a financial stabilization reserve, is to be able to absorb those kinds of things. So maybe that's a better approach rather than consistently taxing more than we need and it just going into surplus if that happens.
Thank you, Mayor. We did put together a storm budget, correct?
We have that for hydro.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a storm deferral account. For our general taxation, we took a portion of surplus and carved it out into a new reserve called the Financial Stabilization Reserve, which makes it cleaner as far as pulling money from that to absorb these kinds of ebbs and flows. And that's what it's designed for, is a situation where you get a higher than normal snow removal.
It could be like if we had a flood situation where there was like some damage, could you draw it from there to work on that in an emergency?
You could do a financial plan amendment and say, we want to pull these costs from our financial stabilization reserve.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, the overall level of taxation for this particular piece could be lowered, and then we would use that bucket of money when needed.
Potentially, yeah, I think that might be an approach to take to keep in line with what, I don't want to say the new normal, but when you look at that, you can see that,
Every
that
5 years or
over the
so.
last number of years, that's been higher than we needed, so.
And maybe just to build on that, the human resources side of it, as they said, stays the same. And it's just a matter of like which side of the scales it goes on. Does it go on parks or transportation, right? So I think, and I haven't been around for one of the big seasons, but a lot of those additional costs come in the form of contracted services, I'm imagining. Snowmageddon, I think we spent a fair amount of money on hauling the snow and the companies. So while this budget might come down, that equivalent might have to go up unless we actually had room in there for contractors. Maybe you could speak to that a bit, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, there is some capacity in the past, especially with that increased budget that we did in 2022. That's because we had hindsight at that point. We were passing the budget and we'd already had Snowmageddon, so we knew, hey, we're gonna have contractor costs of this amount. So it was a fairly straightforward thing to do. But moving crews to utilities early and having them be able to work on this type of work that provides a long-term benefit is not a bad thing, right? Instead of just pushing white stuff around, and it's important as well, but if we can use this opportunity to actually gain some productive work from folks, I think that's awesome.
That's good, thank you.
So water and wastewater operations are trending over budget slightly just due to the emergency water main breaks earlier this year in the water utility and minor repairs at the wastewater treatment plant. Both we're monitoring pretty closely and hoping to keep those in line with budget by the end of the year.
And also for the very reasons I just explained too, that we moved crews into water earlier. You can see it reflected in some of those additional costs.
It is, is that, this isn't picking up capital, though, is it?
No, so that there was some capital increases as well. I think when Amy gets to the capital piece, yeah, you'll see that there's some higher costs in that as well.
Nelson Hydro expenses are trending on budget for 2025. Power purchases are in line with prior years at this time and are forecasted to come within 1% of budget. Flipping over to the capital side, NG 911, all of our equipment is on premise. They've been installed and they are running a test environment currently. Once the system configurations are complete, training will begin with the police department staff. The City of Nelson's go live date is now scheduled for March 2026. And the CRTC's deadline is March 31st, 2027. The finished water storage is scheduled to have the structure completed by the end of the year. Once the reservoir is complete, all the piping for the water, sanitary and storm will go in, followed by training structures to regain access to flow meters, chambers, and controls, which will be completed in 2026. Hydro capital, we completed the planned maintenance on the G4 intake gate. We've started the Mount Nelson power line replacement, which will carry forward into 2026. And teams have continued to work through the progress of the SCADA and GIS software systems. Parks, the cemetery plan was completed and presented to council just 2 weeks ago. Phase 2 of the parks grand plan will
Just be careful, it's not a strategic plan for parks, it's an operational plan of how do we best manage our parks, so it's not a, you know, what parks should we have and all those sorts of things, it's how do we maintain and manage these parks that we do have. Okay.
Equipment, we've purchased 1.29 million of budget to date. Actual and projected savings of 135,000 at the end of the year. We're assuming with all of the units procured. Substantial savings is from our hydro boom truck that we took secondhand.
So Amy, when you say they're under budget, is that the equipment we bought is under budget, or we haven't bought all the equipment we needed, or we planned on and budget's under budget?
No, when we say under budget, we've had savings. If it's, yeah.
Yeah, we're careful not to project the message we're under budget just because we didn't do things.
Okay.
Yeah, we're under budget because Jody was able to source us a secondhand hydro boom truck and well as other savings, so yeah.
That's awesome.
Street paving is all complete. We did Houston Street, Stanley Street, as well as our annual communication. Those are the comments I was going to speak on, unless people have other questions.
Questions, councilors?
Yeah, I think we're gone through the water and wastewater stuff in pretty good detail.
So overall,
I think if you go back to that, and it's probably in your package where you actually had statements there. I think we're right in line with where we were last year as far as our year to date and compared to budget. What was that at? 71%
71% of expenses. Yeah.
Councilor Lockenberg has a question.
Can you, and apologies if you've talked about this before, but can you remind me or tell us what the projected revenues are going to be from some of the new development, and maybe it's immaterial because we're already charging at full assessment. I'm thinking in particular, this has occurred to me as I was driving by and seeing quite a bit of the construction being done, like the new complex right there, seniors, like that should be a significant assessment, shouldn't it? And, but we're not charging it the full assessment
Well, I think
until it's-
that's, yeah, what I was talking about with the BC assessment report that came out, and I was expecting some bigger numbers than that. We'd had, again, translating it into taxation, 200,000 a year over the last couple of years, and this year it was 50,000.
Mhm.
So that surprised me too, bit of back and forth with BC assessment, things like this building here hasn't moved a heck of a lot in a year, so we would have picked up most of that last year, and it's only what changed this year. We had the health campus last year, things like that. Although that one, I'm not sure that's taxable, but yeah, so there's a lot of, I think there's quite a bubble of things, and it's seemed to have calmed down a bit, but again, I'm trying to get a bit more information, because I was surprised as well. I was expecting higher.
So just as a follow-up on that, to be clear then, that we would be charging full assessment on that building now?
When is the?
No, when it's finished.
It is when it's finished.
Assessment date, October 31st, I think.
Well, I think it's as of that, July date when they do all their
So they look at
assessments, right? So
what the status of the
Yeah.
building is in July, so
Right.
what percentage completed is.
Right.
And it's assessed that, we charge our whole, our rate, but it's on the value
But
of
it's
the
on the
building
value
at
of
that
the
time.
And the value, it doesn't achieve its full value until the doors are open.
And the same thing when you build a residential unit. Like when I was building my house, I got
Right.
taxed
Progressively.
progressively.
Right.
they would have assessed that July 2024.
Yeah.
And then they would have still assessed it July 2025, and it's that change. And in that change,
it wasn't
maybe
much
not a heck of
change.
a lot, right?
Do you guys, as part of your forecasting, like try to aim for, I assume that building's gonna be done, or these other buildings are gonna be done?
It's
or-
whatever BC assessment says is
At the
in
time, so
role.
you're not really kind of forecasting
Nothing
ahead
we can
based on.
do, it's based totally on their assessment as of July of 2025, is what we get to tax on.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm just
Yeah.
thinking about forecasting your
Like
budget.
future years, like
Yeah.
2027. Yeah, I mean, we've assumed there's a nominal amount of new taxation.
Okay, so
in
you
there, and
don't,
when
you're
you
not
get
that specific.
additional, then you're like, great. If it's less
Right.
than that, then yeah, there's a bit of a.
Yeah, okay, cause I was thinking about the Kulos, I was thinking about this one, I'm just trying to think like, are you guys kind of doing an inventory of what's coming online and then anticipating tax, but it sounds like you're not.
We haven't got that granular with
Yeah,
it. It's
okay,
probably-
that's fine, I was curious.
Councilor Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I wanted to say congratulations on, keeping all this in line and in good direction. Thank you very much. Cause I always wanna say, I can go out and I talk to people on the street and they ask me all kinds of questions, and budget, is where are we at, and I just say with confidence that we're doing well, we've got a great team on it, and it just feels good to be able to say that it's being well managed, so. And I've seen over the years, it really like coming out of COVID with all that uncertainty, and how you guys manage it all, seem to be in pretty good straits, so thank you so much.
We'll pass that along to department heads and stuff too, because
Yeah.
it's their budget, they do a great job of managing that, we just tell them when they're not.
Well, it just feels like a lot of pieces are being taken care of, like we're doing a lot of stuff that seems like maybe didn't get to for a bunch of years, and it just feels like the city seems to be operating well, it looks good.
Yep.
So, thank you.
Councilor Tate.
On that happy note.
Don't be Debbie Downer now, you're Councilor Tate.
Federally and provincially, all the signals are pointing to reduced public service and contraction in services, maybe not in capital projects, but in services. That doesn't necessarily affect our revenue in the same way, because we are in charge of our own taxation, but I'm curious what kind of rumblings there are on our own team about what that could look like if some of these other pieces stop coming in, like, I'm not an expert, but say for example, there's fewer grants that go into capital projects, so then we need fewer resources to complete those capital projects, as an example. I'm just curious, what kind of rumblings are we having considering the national provincial context?
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of big projects, as you know, that we were looking for assistance on, grant funding, like a fire hall, like wastewater treatment plant, like force main. That application's already in, so So yeah, I wouldn't, if some of these don't materialize, then we would need to pivot and adjust and, you know, either increase rates and or borrow to complete them, so we do
Or delay them.
delay them, yeah.
So, and most of those are third-party contracted work, so, you know, they're not, our direct staff aren't delivering those. Yes, we have, you know, certainly, we've increased the position to deliver capital projects more effectively on the capital side. But I think that didn't necessarily anticipate, you know, we didn't hire that position for the fire hall or for, you know, we're gonna have to do the force main one way or the other, you know. I think our smiley faces there anymore, but you've seen how many clamps are on that, and you know, we spent what, 100,000 or plus to, you know, to deal with, you know, the emergent repairs, and obviously
70 last year, yeah.
so obviously from environment we have to do that. So there's a few that we need to go ahead with, and other ones, yeah, we're running out of time on a fire hall, but you know, that won't be ultimately, you know, can we go out and, you know, that's a huge impact on taxation if we have to go out and fund that entirely ourselves, especially in light of the challenge we have with just maintaining our existing buildings. So that will, you know, hopefully there, you know, there is that type of funding for those type of projects. So that's not so much our staff, but really a decision, do we go ahead without grants and incur that significant impact locally, and what does that mean for the rest of the capital or facilities that we have? What do we do with those? So we're gonna bring back some things in the early new year on, you know, some strategies to manage that huge shortfall there. But like I said, I think from our own staffing point of view, it's really, we're staffed to primarily deliver what we deliver now. Roads, the utility upgrades, et cetera, that we fund ourselves. And you know, we bring on additional resources when we have these larger capital projects. So but having said that, we're, you know, as Chris talked about, you know, there's definitely pressure on taxation and this year, and we have this big gap to try to figure out on the facility side. So we're definitely looking at how we best utilize our resources. How do we move maybe capital around? You know, as we've talked about, you know, we have too many facilities that we can't maintain them all. So how do we deal with those things? So yes, we are definitely looking at probably more so from our own operations point of view rather than for the provincial, federal piece of it.
So it sounds like, and you have more experience than me in this kind of cycle of government, there isn't necessarily kind of a direct correlation between the contraction of the federal and provincial public services and municipal workforce. Is there an indirect and like a certain predictable lag before that kind of comes down the pipe?
That impacts us directly.
Yeah. If we're having fewer people in the federal public service,
yeah,
due to non-replacement, et cetera, contraction, restructuring, efficiencies, optimization, and still delivering the same service supposedly, and then we see that also provincially, is there like a, you know, a standard lag before we start to see that municipally and regionally?
In terms of the impact financially or?
Financially and contraction, non-replacement, these sorts of things, optimization, restructuring, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely on the, you know, the biggest program we're at risk of is our climate team. So much of that's funded by grants, right? So that's probably the most direct one that we'd be at risk at. If that that funding dries up on that side.
I would also say that one of the impacts, in my experience, that we've seen during these types of restructurings is additional responsibilities on local government.
Yeah.
Right, so it's those senior levels of government saying, you know, akin to the like professional reliance model, you know, where it's like, okay, well, you know, the local governments can be more responsible for those aspects, and we will get rid of this sort of oversight staff. So it's actually, you know, an interesting, in my experience anyways, and which is much more limited than some in the room, it's an interesting line to walk, because all of a sudden, you know, you're hearing that there's all this contraction from senior levels of government, and then all of a sudden there's more responsibilities on local governments because they're no longer doing what they once did, right? So that would be one of the observations that I have from the past.
Well, we shall see.
No, that is definitely true.
Just to be clear, because maybe you heard something different. From what I understood was the separation of operations from capital operations being sort of the running of the federal workforce primarily, but you know, other things like that. On the capital side is quite a significant increase in investment, including to local governments.
Mhm.
So if anything, we should be seeing more opportunity.
Yeah, it'll be
But it
interesting.
could, that's what I,
Yeah, there.
That's what it's looked like, but let's also remember a lot of those announcements that have been made have been.
Yeah.
What I always struggle with, Council Lockberg, is the fact that it's a re-announcement of money that's already been announced. So depending on what day you decided to join the news stream, you think that there's now $50 billion. And that's going all across Canada. You see that number, usually people don't read the part that's 50 billion over the next 3 years. And the fact that they announced 40 billion of that 50 billion 6 months ago, right? Like, the numbers look amazing, and it depends how much of the soundbite, like I always find like, oh, nice soundbite. I think I already heard about that money 3 months ago or 4 months ago. And so, yes, there's money for capital projects. I think more to Councillor Tate, and I don't wanna put words in her mouth, is this idea of capital and
Please don't.
operating. And I can tell you after 35 plus years in healthcare, there's usually always money for capital, and there's very rarely money for operating. So I can remember towers in Vancouver being built at Vancouver General Hospital that remained empty for multiple years. They had grants, they had public entrepreneurs financing, you know, philanthropic things, and the tower stayed empty because they couldn't afford to operate it. And so I think that's the problem. It's like, do we start finding, and so my example would be potholes, is that we a number of years ago, in our council, previous, we upped the, I think, road to $1 million, like for that kind of, you know, so, you know, do we leave it at $1 million knowing that there's cost escalation and that maybe it should be like, you know, 1.3 or 1.4, and that now we fill in potholes every 2 years instead of every year, right? Like, I think there's two things there. There's the operation and the city. So as everything contracts, do we see a contracture in that eventually that the local government has? Because I would agree with Mr. Johnson in terms of the fact that usually what we see when we see these losses federally and provincially, there is way more downloading than onto the local governments to be able to then deal with all of it instead of just some of it. But let us hope that the capital, we're very good at writing our grants, so fingers crossed that.
My understanding from it all is that this opportunity, the federal government doesn't, they want growth, they're looking for growth. This is a growth budget, it's not an austerity budget per se, it's austerity from the sense of the workforce, but
Operating.
if there are projects that can absorb the capital, so you know, the shovel-ready projects, the federal government is very amenable because that's part of the larger growth strategy. So we, being a shovel-ready city, ideally should be continuing to communicate to our staff that if we have projects that fit that bill, like maybe this is time to lean into the work on, well, I mean, you are doing it. I was thinking the water treatment plant and other things.
I mean, the Civic Arena was
Civic Arena.
such a project
Yeah.
in 1920, whatever, right?
1936.
Yeah, exactly. The communications that I've been reading is that the federal government is very open at this moment to business, especially from local government, if these are real projects and if there's sort of a proven track record of delivery, because they do want action, they want things in the ground, and so getting to the front of the line is really important.
Yeah, and I think we're there. I think that we actually have staff that know how to play this game
Grants, yeah.
and, you know, pull these levers, that I think that we're there. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had that force main, like, we were probably we didn't wait till Friday at midnight. I talked to about those grants. What is that grant called? The
Strategic priority.
strategic priority plan. So the person that heads that, I sit in on another committee in the province with, and I said, so how was it with the grants coming in? And he said, oh, well, the last week of the grants, like on Monday, we had like 4 applications in. And he said, and at like 11:50 on Friday night with a midnight closure, they got like 100,
Yeah,
right? Like Nelson wasn't in the 100. Nelson was on Monday,
yeah.
right? Like we are there.
Yeah.
It's not a second thought, because we know that's how we run the city here, so.
Yeah.
The disconnect can be though, we need environmental approvals, we need
Yeah.
all this permitting. And if they don't have that staffing to be
Yeah,
able
right.
to, you know, give us that permitting, they're delaying our
This was the
projects.
curiosity I had when
Mhm.
GM spoke as well,
Yeah.
like, we can't become dam specialists ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting process.
That's the problem when you cut out that workforce, because that's the workforce that gets cut off.
But what they require is that we do more of the work that
And the reporting.
yeah, right, that they used to do. So now all of a sudden, instead of, you know, that being sort of coordinated there, they figure out like, what is the last step that we need to understand to make sure that your dam is okay?
Smart regulation.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
you know, then just take it all the way there, whereas they used to do steps before that, so.
Yeah.
That's where that increase.
Yeah, make us responsible for dams, right, and berms and all
Which
these
is what they
things
would love
that-
to do, and that's why the RD has always
Yeah.
pushed back on the RD. I mean, we have a few weirs and dams that probably fall within the city, but in terms of the regional district that has a lot more, they've taken a firm no on taking any more in that they have to manage, because, you know,
Province doesn't want to have responsibility
Yeah.
for it.
Mount Poly happened and now it's local government's fault, like they have to carry the load. So
Yeah.
it's a challenge.
Yeah.
Councillor Woodward.
When these downloads happen and we take on the responsibility, either out of whether we wanna organize it better or we know what's happening locally, like it doesn't go the other way then, like it's not, like we usually are stuck with it then, right? As soon as-
Pretty much.
As soon as we take it on, it's not like the BC government, federal government's like, okay, we're ready to like take that back.
Manage the interchanges again? No.
Right, so the download typically is one direction, is that correct?
There's no upload.
There's no upload.
UBCM is the forum where this
Upload.
stuff gets brought up, right?
Right.
To try and, I mean, that's, to me, one of the major points of UBCM is to, you know, at once provide a common voice or a coordinated voice to the province. And, you know, one of those things is this downloading, like, hey, you can't. So, you know, it's always that pushback, and you'll see when something new comes down, as the mayor mentioned about the dikes, orphan dike policy that came out from the province about 10 years ago or so, and they changed the wording and, you know, changed it all so that basically, you know, the province would give funding to, you know, repair or upkeep these orphan dikes, as they called them. But to do that, a local government had to be involved and take responsibility for the dike going forward, right? So it was their way of downloading that responsibility, what used to be in their hands. They're the ones that built all these dikes back in the day, and then now they're saying, yeah, no, we don't wanna manage that anymore, right? So, yeah, that's how it goes, and then it goes at UBCM, RDCK, numerous times. I helped write the resolutions that went forward about diking, that this should be a provincial responsibility, and, you know, so pushing back. You know, whether you get any results, another question, but that's the forum that you attempt to upload, or at least advocate for upload.
Uploading, yes.
And in between time, then they put in new regulations that we're responsible for as well. You know, the Heritage Conservation Act is the latest one. We're trying to change, you know, what our involvement in that is, and you know, probably for right reasons, but you know, there's no, like, are we supposed to try to figure out archaeologists and all that stuff? Like, it's, you know, well, the whole homelessness challenge, right? You know, that was not local government's responsibility not very long ago, like the majority, or, you know, at this level of time we spend now are things that we just never did. Right? We weren't our responsibilities, we weren't responsible for health and housing and all those sorts of things, right? You know, our part was zoning and building permits and all those things, but now it's like, oh, we have to try to find land and find organizations that will build and run housing and all those things.
Is there more, is the provincial government saying, we will give you money to deal with that, we just don't wanna deal with it, so here's some money? Or is it like, just deal with it and we're not actually gonna give you money to deal with it?
It's both, but
It's a bit of both, but the problem with the grant, as you know, Councillor Woodward, is that here's some money, but but then we're supposed to have it perfected by the next year or by 3 years or whatever, and then you're competing with every other community that needs the same. We're not the only community that probably needs to have a new sewer treatment plant. We're not the only community that has, you know, other issues, and you're competing. And when I see the amounts of money that are on the table, you know, you couldn't buy a cup of coffee if you parsed it out between the population and within the province of British Columbia. I mean, yeah.
You know, further to that, I think one of the challenges is to the city manager's point, it is both. So sometimes it just gets, you know, downloaded and no, you need to deal with that, whether it's because of the cuts that, you know, the feds made back in the 80s when they didn't do, you know, social housing anymore, and now here we're feeling the effects. But a lot of the funding that comes out is for capital. And I think that we, as a municipality, do a really good job of being intentional of what capital we go for. And we use a term often, it's about chasing shiny, right? They have these new shiny things that, you know, senior levels of government want to have a program that we want to, you know, build more of this. And I think that we're really good at looking at that and saying, do we really need this? Because while we get the capital infusion to build it or construct it, now we have to operate it and maintain it for its lifetime. And so does that, you know, look like more staff? So we got to hire somebody to look after it. You know, there's going to be investment over time. There's going to be replacement value. So I think that we actually have a really good process for taking a sober second thought on our grants. You know, do we really need this? And I think we have a very clean direction in going forward, and you know, partially or largely through necessity of no, all of our grant efforts need to go towards, you know, the wastewater system, both force main plant, you know, our water system, there's upgrades that are required, our facilities. These are the areas that we're really trying to focus on. You know, active transportation, we're trying to build that up. So we do have very targeted needs, and we're not sort of chasing these other grants that might pop up because they end up costing money in the end. So that's a good point.
Okay, that was a good conversation, everybody. And
Downer. Opportunity and
any last questions about the Q3 financial update? Everybody's good? Okay, and then moving on to water and wastewater.
Okay, so just wanted to do a little bit of a recap of where we ended off. I think we substantially completed most of our work in talking about the water and wastewater utilities, but just wanted to end with a bit of a recap. Then we'll talk briefly about resource recovery fees and get some direction from council, because next time we come back, we'd like to bring the first 3 readings of a rate bylaw. So just want to get some direction from you if you're comfortable with us moving forward with that. So just wanted to start off by, and it's interesting, a lot of this we just talked about, but like where are we at as a utility? And I want to say that these are not, this is not unique to a water or wastewater utility. We're, you know, it's the same issues that we see with all of our infrastructure, and it's the same issues that we see with infrastructure across the country in North America, to be honest. This is where we are as local governments. You know, we're dealing with aging infrastructure. So specifically to our water and wastewater utilities, we got a 5-mile pipeline that's 100 years old. They should be getting something, like I would think a letter from the king, or I don't know how that works.
Letter from
Oh, like.
You're 100, I don't know.
Mayor.
From the mayor, yeah. You know, we got a force main and wastewater treatment plant that are both built in the 70s, early 70s. The wastewater treatment plant was upgraded in 2005, but those are, you know, as we know, needing improvements.
Can I just ask a quick question? Historically, was the wastewater treatment plant always where it is and just rebuilt in that year, or was it?
In 2005?
In 17,
In
or
1972?
1972, yeah, 17, wow.
Not sure, to be honest, what
Was
happened
it?
prior to 1970.
I don't know what they were doing before the 70s.
Might have been straight shot.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah.
inquiring about. Okay, okay.
Just.
Okay,
Is that
thank
plan-
you, that's,
plan was- Yeah.
Yeah, 2005 was to introduce that secondary RBC treatment at that time.
yeah, I get that.
So yeah, aging infrastructure, we've got population growth to deal with, so we're, you know, at the 2026 census, 12,646 people. You know, we've got growth projected in the housing needs report by 2041, just over 15,000, 2086, 24,000. So we need to kind of look forward to what does that look like for us as a community and how do we deal with that. We've got climate change to contend with, and you know we've dealt with those issues as far as you know how we build out our secondary source, how we look to putting in a finished water storage, conservation measures as far as, you know, how do we deal with frequency and severity of droughts. You know, any upgrade of the 5 Mile pipeline is going to be an expanded pipeline, so we can take advantage of our full water license. We just spoke on regulation and how that impacts you know, our ability to replace infrastructure, you know, usually at a higher standard, which is, these are all good things, but they do add additional cost and complexity. We have budget that we had to increase in 2025 and for 2026 for dam safety. Asset management is becoming more and more of a requirement. You know, the Community Works Fund that we all sign up for, and there's certain rules and regulations in place as far as our ability to continue receiving that money. And it requires us to have asset management plans in place going forward for all of our assets, not just the water and wastewater utility. And there's a couple missing from here too when I think about, you know, people as well. Like we've got a group of folks that are kind of ending their careers, they're heading into retirement. We need to replace those folks, and going with them is quite a large knowledge base that they have. So we need to be able to bring, you know, new people in and kind of work alongside them. And in the last budget cycle, council approved, for example, bringing in a capital projects coordinator and having that person then be able to work with some of our existing staff and get some of that knowledge from them. And also, yeah, a lot of that knowledge is just knowledge in those human beings. You know, we didn't have the systems and technology in place to really document where we were at as well as I think we can in the future. So we're looking at, you know, again, council approved us to move ahead with GIS and to be able to have those systems where we can really document, you know, where things are, when they were replaced, how much did it cost, have those systems in place so that we can better deal with situations where folks might move on and retire.
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, just in my work experience, I've been in a lot of small organizations where, you know, it gets built around 1 or 2 people, and then those people go, and just the whole thing is shaken and sometimes collapses. But one of the things I think that is seeing a lot of is that we are methodically kind of replacing kind of memory and story with like actual with data that people can come and go from these jobs, and it doesn't like cause a big dip in providing services. So I think that's a great direction where we can pieces can move. Once we have it kind of set up, people's pieces can move, and new people can come and other people can go, and we're not struggling. That's a great goal. But it seems like, because we're leaving this kind of analog system of stories and memory and institutional memory and visual, so it's quite a transformation.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that's, one of the main reasons to put these systems in place is that everyone has access to the same information, and it's not all within one person, and if they happen to not be there, then it's like, well, we gotta wait for so-and-so to come back, who's on vacation, or whatever it is, right? So, yeah.
So it's great, thank you.
Gotta do it with your finger.
Yeah, you
Huh.
can.
Okay, all right, thanks. You saw me struggling here with this thing, I'm like, oh, this is not moving. And another piece that's not on here, and it's kind of a good segue to the next slide, is just costs. Like, costs have increased more than they have in the past. Over the last number of years, we've seen inflation at higher than, what one would consider to be that, 1.5% or 2%. So that's another piece that we're kind of dealing with currently. So yeah, that's a good segue of kind of looking at, there's a couple components to where we're going as a utility. So the first piece is just dealing with the past 5 years of high inflation. So this is an interesting chart. I've pegged a couple of indices here at 100 in 2017, and just looking at how they've changed up to 2026. So the top gray line is the construction price index, and we often use that as a bit of a proxy for what those material costs are: paving, water lines, sewer lines, contractor costs, those types of things. And so you can see how that's changed from 2017 to be up 177% of where it was at that time. The next blue line there is what folks normally think of when they think of inflation, the consumer price index. That's a basket of goods that is not really representative of what a municipality's basket of goods is. Our labor tends to follow CPI, but those other costs that I just mentioned do not. So our true costs are probably somewhere in the middle of those. And then the bottom green line is our water and wastewater utility rates over that time. So you can see with the proposed 2026 utility rates, we've really just caught up to CPI. We're at 129% of where it was in 2017, and we're basically at a point where our rates have grown at the same rate as inflation for that time.
And I think that's only possible because of, the investment that successive councils started, 25 years ago now, or 20 years ago now. So, we have built reserves, and we had to go out and borrow for all these improvements. If, we can manage those, we're not in sort of those crisis places of having to, having water mains. We had a budget meeting here one year, and water main on Ward Street here, burst right out, right up front of the City Hall door. So we're past that. Our linear infrastructure used to be what you saw from that force main. We used to just put clamps on it, pick it up, put a clamp on it.
What this does also tell us, though, is that our future rates will likely need to be at that higher than CPI rate. We need to bridge that gap a little bit more to kind of get us back where we're closer to, I don't know if we have to mirror that construction price index, but we do need to bridge the gap a little bit in order to be able to fund the capital that we have projected over the next number of years. And I think you saw that when I laid out what the next 10 years of the utility look like. We're not looking at, next year is gonna be 1.5% or 2%. We do need to kind of make up that infrastructure gap, that funding gap that, again, is not unique to our utility, and it's not unique to our municipality. It's just, part of having that infrastructure boom after World War II, and we're trying to catch up with some of that aging infrastructure.
Councilor Ward.
Thank you, but this is like a perfect place to recognize that rate smoothing and long-term planning are like key to that very goal. Right, we really wanna look 10 years, we wanna have that smooth 3 to 5% so people aren't shocked, they can match it with what they're making. So that, yeah, it's great work to have that very long term vision.
Yeah, exactly, like the city manager was said, we started saving for wastewater treatment plant a number of years ago and, made conscious decisions to ensure that we have funds in place. This kind of takes us to, we talked about the last 5 years, this is looking ahead to the next 50 years.
Right.
Like how do we set ourselves up so we have a long-term sustainable water and wastewater utility that we're delivering, the quality of water and service that residents today expect, and it'll be the same for folks 50 years from now. So in the background, you can see kind of that gray bar. Those are our utility reserves, the water and wastewater combined, and how that we draw those reserves down over the next decade as we take on some of these larger capital projects. Then the green bars are our capital spending between both the water and wastewater utility in those years, and you can see the big projects. We got a force main that we're gonna start the planning work in 2026 or continue planning work and then look to tackle in 2027. You've got the 5-mile pipeline in 2029, 2030. You start to tackle the wastewater treatment plant over that time as well. And this is possible, of course, with grants as well, a force main, wastewater treatment plant, and with borrowing. We have borrowing projected for 5-mile pipeline replacement as well. So, I think we've done a good job of setting ourselves up to be able to take these on. We're gonna need some, hopefully assistance from other levels of government to be able to tackle some of these. It's interesting, municipalities are responsible for 60% of the country's infrastructure, and we get 10 cents on every dollar of taxation.
It's just unbelievable. That is.
So just a reminder or an update or refresher on some of the major projects we've got planned for 2026. We're finishing that treated water storage that Amy just mentioned of where we're at and what's planned for next year. The 5-mile pipeline replacement, we're continuing with that planning work, but over the next 5 years, we will be taking on that work. So you can see the 2027 to 2030 budgets along there. So that's all in the 5-year financial. Water main upgrades, we've got Josephine, we've got 85 Baker to help with that project. We've got the extension of the raw water line to the lake. Those are planned for 2026. And we'll continue to do more of that work in the remainder of the 5-year plan. Planning and work towards the force main. Yep, sorry.
Sorry, can you just repeat what you said about the lake?
Yeah,
So that's under water main upgrade.
correct.
Okay.
Yep. So it's one of those projects that will be kind of extending that water line up near the health campus there to, we chip away at that one and every year try and do a little bit more.
Thank you.
And I have a question here, thank you, Mayor, sorry. The amounts we're spending, so there's a 2026 budget, 2027 and 2030 amounts that we're spending. So with the wastewater treatment plant, 30 million, so we're obviously not gonna have completed the wastewater treatment plant by 2030.
Correct.
So this is just building up to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I think we'll probably be, in the first third or halfway through that project by that time, so.
Thank you.
Yep, so we'll work on the force main in 2026, some planning and engineering on that, and then look to tackle that project in 2027.
Easy question, sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
Is it force main or forced main?
It's no D.
No D
Forced
ever.
Yeah.
It's just, we just have sometimes say it wrong. Okay, thank you, carry on.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm not even sure it's actually a word, is it?
And I don't know, because every time
We've
you,
been through this, it is.
It is.
I have been through it.
but it always gets the little line when you write
Yeah.
force
Yeah.
main.
Totally.
It tells me it's a spelling mistake and wants to make it into force and main.
It's a force main, because it has force in the main.
Forcing the product through it.
I caught it, I took physics. Thank you.
Yep, so force main, wastewater treatment plant, we discussed that, continue that planning work and look to start that project in the next 5 years. And then the sewer main capacity upgrades, there were a number of those that were identified in the wastewater master plan. So we'll be tackling portions of that. The one for 2026 to start the planning work on is that collector line along Lakeside. And then there's other sections of that as well to do in 2027. So we'll sort of start that work, and then the main work will be in 2027 and 2028. And then the last piece, just to kind of bring this back, this is what Shannon talked about as far as other work that we'll be looking at, is how do we get conservation measures and increase our education and work around that. Currently, City of Nelson on average uses 430 liters per capita per day. It's lower in the winter, of course, 350, and higher in the summer, about 473. When we have moved to those stage 3 restrictions in 2018 and 2021, our usage dropped to 275 liters a day. So that's all within the potential for us to be able to get to if needed. But 400 liters a day is sort of the average across the country of what most per capita water use is. So we're a little bit above that. So I think there's some more work that we could do on the education and conservation side to sort of bring us in line with that. So that'll be a big part of the 2026 work plan as well.
I guess my question, you just answered it. I was looking at this chart trying to figure out if I could, and I couldn't late last night, but it's 430 is the daily averaged over the year. And the Canadian daily average is 401.
Just over 400, yeah,
slightly
that's right.
above,
Yep.
which is double what Europe uses, which was an interesting thing to me. So I think there's lots of places where we could look for answers, and it's not even close to what the Americans and the Australians use, so.
Is theirs a lot higher in the US? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all
I'm trying to
lawns
figure
and gardens, right? So you look at Europe and they probably don't have the, manicured golf course lawns in their back.
Well, the other thing it mentioned was that we have a higher percentage of unmetered water. Because water metering, even though it's inexpensive to feed it by gravity, has a psychological effect of people utilizing less water. There's lots of statistics around there. It's not difficult to find. And we do have this perceived abundance of water, which means we have a culture of less stringent conservation. We're just used to having lots, so we use it. It's really like so many other things in our culture. But yeah, I agree. I think conservation is a big thing. The other thing I was looking at that popped up, and this is just going back, I remember a lot of work has been done on sort of sealing up the leaks, and it said across Canada the average is 15% is loss. Are we down to 15% now, or have we done better than that? Do we know? I think when the work first started, we were around 30, 35%. It was pretty significant.
We thought there was a gap between the sanitary and the.
It's difficult to say with the outdoor because
Okay.
the water system isn't designed for people to have outdoor use. So you're not supposed to be able to water your grass or garden with treated water, right? So normally to find out exactly how much leakage you would have, you would, meters is nice. But if you had the actual math of how much water you put out of your water treatment plant and how much you receive in your wastewater treatment plant. But there's a lot of variables that go into that. So, we can, our understanding of the amount of maintenance that we have time to do to go around and listen to our water mains so you can hear when they're leaking, the amount of calls that we get, all of that has come down significantly. I'm not sure what our best guess is now, but if we started at 35%, we've replaced, I can't remember how many kilometers of pipe in the last sort of 10 or 15 years. It's significant.
It's been really significant. I did hear
Yeah.
numbers, maybe it wasn't in the city context, maybe it was out at a different, listening to a hydrologist.
Yeah, it's generally it's that winter use, we're not using it for outdoor use,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, that's what we look
your
at, yeah.
sanitary versus your water and
Even since
but
20.
we're doing our part of it, right? There's losses on the customer side of it, right? You know, they're,
And that's what the conservation and the education is gonna focus on, so that'll be another step in the right direction.
yeah,
And you can see from this dip here that, I know we've talked about it before, but rain barrels might be part of the smoothing there, and many municipalities across the country are subsidizing the purchase use, and it may be something that the water ambassador that we've talked about having for next summer could assist with.
Yeah, and just to be clear, we don't plan on having a water ambassador as much as we
Okay,
plan
sorry.
on having one of our staff deliver that program, our existing staff, so.
That information being delivered out in some way whatsoever.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah,
Rain Barrels is a very popular program, subsidizing rain barrels, very popular program in other municipalities. And yeah, we're excited to see what our staff will come up with based on previous work done.
Yeah, it's just so clear when you look at these usages, because as you say, when you look at residential use, it's not necessarily watering the lawn but this year, because of the rain cycle that we had, and it's pretty clear on there as well, I was able to water out of my rain barrels for a significant portion of the year, because every time they got low, it rained again. And that doesn't always happen, that was a little bit of an anomaly, but it still was pretty significant for our household. And I can't measure how water goes out either, or I would, but thanks.
So, just to transfer back into sort of the financial side of things, here's what the impact would be on rates, so we have 2025 rates on the left, 2026 in the middle. Under the 2026 proposed rates, the water and wastewater for a single-family dwelling would be $107 a month, which is an increase of $6 over 2025. And for an additional suite, it'd be $27 a month, which is an increase of $2 over 2025. As far as on the commercial side, looking at that, hypothetical restaurant with 50 seats, the cost per month in 2026 would be $316, which is an increase of $18 per month. And a small business with 5 fixtures, $262 per month in 2026, or an increase of $15.
Any questions, councillors? Any more questions?
May I have a copy in our email, this, please?
This is
This-
on.
this is
It's
the
in
agenda.
your
It's
agenda.
in your
I just-
meeting agenda, it's there.
It's in the agenda.
I know it is, I just like to have it in my library,
Oh, in your library, okay.
yes.
Okay.
I always put all of them, if I can, in my library so I can access them anytime, because sometimes they disappear.
So you can't do that out of here, it doesn't matter, it's Tucker, you can,
It's just
thank
my-
you.
Yeah.
Okay, no questions. Then, let's see, 10:22. We'll take a break for 15 before we do, we're going to resource recovery next.
Yeah, it'll be rather brief, I think. We're doing a bigger discussion on December 2nd, so this will be sort of just really just looking at, the rate side of things for resource recovery, but we can take a break, do that, and then there may be some other conversations to have after that, so.
Yeah, okay. 15 minutes, everybody?
Thank you.
Okay, we're back on, we're back live. Welcome to our one guest in the gallery and those that are tuning back in. And we are on our last budget item for the day, and that is to have some introductory remarks about resource recovery, because there'll be more coming in the December 2nd meeting. Okay, so over to Amy, put up her hand.
Thank you, Mayor. So as we know, the pre-treated organics pilot began in 2023 with the distribution of food cyclers to early adopters and to the residents of the Fairview Pilot Neighborhood Program. Just under 1,200 appliances were distributed in 2023. Staff began to collect data on waste diversion. Throughout 2024, the team continued distributing the units to early adopters around the city and conducted multiple waste audits and evaluated results related to pre-treated soil amendment. However, findings were inconclusive. In fall of 2024, Council approved the extension of the pilot program to allow for a secondary data collection period. This year, the team completed distribution reaching nearly 2,400 appliances across the community. During 2025, the team also provided additional education outreach through postcards, videos, and emails to these residents. They also carried out additional evaluation through resident surveys, waste audits, a community science initiative, also known as the Bucket Weight Initiative, and life cycle assessments. And they will come back and present all of their findings at the December 2nd council meeting. So that brings us to today.
Well, fancy.
Thank you. And it's getting fancy.
Wow.
Yeah, and just on the, we'll do the full presentation on the 2nd, but certainly the bucket weight gave us way more insight. It was the first time we actually measured what people were actually diverting, and those numbers correlate actually quite strongly with what people were telling us, how often they were using the food cycler and how much they were diverting. So we had some really strong actual diversion versus trying to figure out what we diverted by what was left when we didn't really know what we started with. Right, was the challenge that we had. And so we have some much better data that we can share. There's still some mysteries around, again, we don't know for sure what we started with, but and we have so much self-haul that there's still some assumptions that you have to make, but definitely much clearer on what we're actually diverting out there, and really positive results.
Councilor Ward.
Thank you. In those diversion rate calculations.
Yep.
Obviously we're tracking what is in those dump bins,
Yeah,
right?
we are. And
Is that like with the
it's
end of the process dumping, does that work into it?
well, we have looked at that, but again, you're making assumptions. How many people are bringing their product there, right? So it depends on what, again, we've surveyed, people have told us how often they, bring their, how much they're using that. So again, you can only use that based on survey data. The bucket weight thing is probably the most conclusive, right?
Okay.
It's actually how much you actually diverted that 6 weeks.
Councilor Payne.
So it's not the bucket weight of the end product?
It is the bucket.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah, so we went out and volunteered, so we know those are probably, it's biased a little bit that people actually volunteered, but so we gave them a bucket and asked them to put all their product in that bucket for 6 weeks, and then we collected them with that bucket.
The amendment, yeah. And then it was multiplied, there's sort of an understood multiplier that we applied to it to get the kgs.
Thank you.
So since annual bills are sent out in January of each year, we are required to set the 2026 rates prior to hearing this presentation from them. However, we know that any way forward does require an increase. Which brings us to the proposed rates for 2026. So consistent with the long-term plan council approved in the prior year, the resource recovery fee will increase $25 to an annual fee of $175 for a single-family dwelling to support the ongoing and further development of the resource recovery program citywide.
I just have a quick question.
Councilor Woodward.
So
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
No, I'm good.
Sorry. Gosh.
So when we're talking about resource recovery, this always confuses me a little bit because we can't recover everything. So we have waste and resource recovery. So it's under one heading, right?
Yeah.
But our goal is 100%, so the zero waste. So that's what we're talking about now,
It's waste and.
waste
waste.
and resource
Yeah,
recovery.
the whole thing.
So it includes waste, organics, and recycling.
I like to call it garbage, like it really worked
I know,
really well
like
20 years ago.
Climate change from garbage, Mayor. I mean, and yeah, I know we do wanna recover as much as possible, and the way we have the system set up in our house, it's, I don't wanna say it's onerous, it's doable, but there's definitely some organization involved in that to get to that place. But yeah, I just wanna be clear for people that we're not yet able to recover every resource out of what leaves your house going somewhere else.
Yeah, and certain products, people are responsible for themselves, their electronics, their
Yep.
batteries, their tires, all those sorts of things. Hopefully they're dealing
But
with
we have
those
no way of
themselves.
knowing if they're taking care of those responsibly at the moment.
Well, we do, when we
Okay.
do the waste audit, we see how much of that product's in our waste stream, and we don't know what people, the RD directly collects some of that material and they recycle that. You know, so that is diverted, whether it's taken to the point or source point or the lease for electronics and bottles and all those things, so, but the waste audit tells us how much of that product's in our waste stream. It's a snapshot in time, mind you, it's one day for, I think they measured, 700 kilograms of our, what do we annually, I can't remember what we are annually, so it's but it gives us that snapshot, it tells us how much recycling is still in that waste stream, and all that will be reported
On December 2nd?
Yeah, council
Very
asked us to look at not just organics, but
Yeah.
how much recycling is still in our waste stream, how much, and they have the data on electronics and stuff, so, we're actually, having the lease depot here, we're actually don't seem to have very much in the waste stream of electronics and those type of products. We don't see a lot of oil, those sorts of things in our waste stream, so that program seems to be quite effective diverting that material.
And therein lies the challenge, though, city manager, in terms of the fact that those programs are all regional district, that's part of the service that we buy into there. I mean, really our only job in all of this is pick up, collecting. And, where we get the numbers and how rigorously the RD looks at numbers, we know anecdotally from all of the years that we've asked for clear numbers and how much we're recycling and stuff, is that it's been very difficult to tease those numbers out of the regional districts. So I think that we do make decisions based on kind of things that are more arbitrary because we don't have hard and fast numbers. But I think we need to keep the pressure on at the regional district to try to dive deeper, at least periodically, into these numbers. Maybe not all of them all at once, but like pick something I have no idea. Like electronics, I take electronics to the Nelson Leafs depot there, but I don't know if they measure that by weight or a number or whatever. Like I took a whole jar of used batteries there the other day to keep them out of the waste stream. Like I don't know how they measure that or if they measure it at all, right? So you don't really know exactly what you're taking out of the waste stream. So Councillor Woodward.
So I've been marinating in resource recovery.
Marinating
Garbage.
in amongst the organics?
The waste
They're
management
organics?
system is the overall to me.
So in 2023, the RD did a comprehensive waste stream, what do they call it here? Review. The title of it was Regional District of Central Kootenai 2023 Comprehensive Waste Composition Study. And they discovered that overall garbage composition was 24% organics, 14% paper, 14% plastic, 11% non-compostable organics, 11% building materials, and other 9%. And so they were recognizing that like there's still a large amount that's going into the dump that could be resource recovered.
Yeah.
So in actuality that then they're pushing hard to try to like get that out. And if we can do that properly, Otashania could last another 50 to 100 years depending. But that's stretching, like, it's so interlinked with how we deal with our waste stream and how long our landfill lasts, so.
Very useful. Can you shoot that too?
I'll share it with council. It was a good document.
Yeah, very interesting.
And staff, please, if you could.
Okay, yes.
No, it's a secret.
I had to work digging around in there.
Yeah, and that was brought up though by, Matt Morrison was at the chamber, one of the chamber meetings this last week on Monday and
Yep.
did talk about the fact that organics is still the biggest chunk of change that's going to the landfill, and of the stuff that's going to the landfill, it's still one of the worst offenders in terms of GHGs because of the methane, so trying to get the organics out, and so
So interesting.
they are expanding their program to start contemplating what ICI looks like and trying to get them more involved, so to get some of the bigger users, so it was interesting to
Nelson, or
hear that.
you're
Sorry?
expanding that ICI outside of the pilot program in Nelson then?
Yeah, the RD is looking at some
Yep.
new regulations, whether they'll come into effect maybe next year if the board can agree to look at them.
That would be great.
Sorry. didn't mean-
That was great.
Perfect. That's why you're there, so that we get these reports back.
Jumping down to tag revenue, tags will remain at $1.75 per tag, and at the same expected budgeted as 2025. Currently, tag revenue is trending over budget, however, with more education and initiatives to reduce that food waste in garbage stream, we feel it's appropriate to keep it budgeted consistent with 2025. It's also to note that tag revenues are purchased by residents and by our resellers in bulk, so we do see an ebb and flow throughout the year. When we load the stock, so we see that going up and down year to year, just due to timing of purchases.
Councillor Payne, then Councillor Lockenberg.
I'm just really curious, I looked around and maybe I wasn't looking in the right spot, but the RDCK has a stated goal for decreasing the per capita disposal from 490 kilograms to 350 kilograms. Do we have a number? Like Nelson Next says we want to decrease, and when I see our tag revenue going up, normally I get pretty excited when revenue goes up, but in this case, I'm like, ooh, we're going in the wrong direction there. We do want tag revenue to go down until we do a price increase, which is, another part of it, but do we have in any of our documentations a stated direction that we can measure against?
As far as, we don't have, only in Nelson Next do we have what are
But
goals.
I couldn't find a
Weight, so.
a 490 kilogram to 350 kilogram. I did not find that. I said, we would like to decrease it, which is, I know those are aspirations,
Yeah.
but I think around aspirations, the only way to achieve them is to set some hard facts against which you can measure your efforts as, are they successful or are they, are we spending our money
Well, and
using our
that's,
resources wisely, to quote my
Yeah.
Girl Guide promise.
yeah, well, obviously recycling and organics are, those are your strategies to reduce that per capita. Hopefully education around, those other products that people can divert. Ultimately, the biggest goal would be people not buying a bunch of stuff that they're throwing out all the time, would be the ideal thing. So, that's more of a on the educational side, and you know, those consumer price programs help on that side as well. But yes, you will see some of those numbers from the residential side. We don't have the commercial side because that is dealt with, as the mayor said, directly by the RD. We don't have the direct haul numbers other than we know what we've been tracking our set out rate, how much the people put out every 2 weeks. Some of that, you know, I think there's people that are doing a really good job that aren't putting their bin out every 2 weeks because they don't need to. But we don't have a direct way of, you know, I think we asked that in the survey of how often people put that out. We have information on in the audits around how many bags per household, the ones we collected from, you know, we have the weights of those, so we have much better data, especially on the residential side. We just don't have it on the commercial side. And when you hear those numbers, you know, they attribute that per capita is based on both your commercial and your residential, and you know, the fact that we're a tourist town and you know, Burger Week, we probably have there might be a little spike in organics that are going to the waste stream when our restaurants are busy, et cetera, et cetera. So those, you know, some of those numbers get, you know, that's how they do it. They attribute the total waste in the community to a per capita number.
I think maybe just to quickly summarize too, so through the work that we've been doing on the waste audits for organics and et cetera, it's giving us a much more reflective number, we believe, of what a household is producing per annum. And once we kind of settle on that number, it will allow us to then set a target if we wanted to have like that quantifiable, you know, performance indicator to say, you know, we think that we are at about, you know, 350, let's say, you know, kilograms per household per year. And we want to bring that down to, you know, 300. The challenge again is, as city manager mentioned, with that easy measurement is the access to self-hauling that everybody has. So, and you know, set out rates. There's a lot that goes into getting that actual accurate per household rate to then set a benchmark against. So we could set one given the data that we currently have, but it would be a lot more arbitrary. So, but we are, through this work, our understanding of our waste stream is growing immensely, and we will be able to continue working on this. And, you know, we've talked about once the organics file is, you know, sort of decided upon and we have a direction that we will be looking at how we can use our existing resources to look at, you know, having people that focus on diversion, right? And then also like dovetails in with focusing on demand management on water. You know, we've not provided this service in the past. We provide the services that we pick up your trash, but we don't have anybody out there educating that their goal, you know, their job is to educate people and help them produce less waste, right? Or, you know, use less water. So we're shifting gears sort of as we go through these projects that help us better understand how we're doing. We're seeing that opportunity to improve, and we believe that we have the resources on board already to be able to focus on that.
Councillor Lockwood.
So our aspiration 6 in Nelson Next is circular economy and enhancing that. And we've got so these are a couple of questions and comments all mixed together. 180,000 from Recycle BC in terms of revenue, and yet we're putting out 165 in expenses for zero waste. Does that mean we've got additional gap to fill? Like, should we be investing more?
Well, that's
or they're not related at all?
that's funding the actual collection.
That's funding the collection.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So then how do we, and Chris, maybe to your point that you're seeing opportunities for public education, but I think of Nanaimo being quite a leader in managing waste, circular economy and that kind of thing. And they've got this circular economy accelerator where they realize, or they have realized, that it's not just about public education, although that's pretty key. It's also about innovation with ICI and other things. Something I think that we've done with the food cycler program, but there's things to learn from there. Like, I don't think we have I know we don't have a restore here in Nelson, but is that a critical part of it? Like, or is there other components that we might be missing that
And I think
unlock?
And that's
The
a bit of the that's the problem.
That's the,
'Cause that's the RDCK.
right,
And so this is like government downloading. If we decide that we're gonna have
We're gonna
this
lean
and we're
in.
gonna have that, you know, they're more than happy the fact that we have the oil container shortage and
Yeah.
it's here in Nelson. They're quite happy. Like, oh, you wanna make it bigger? Well, as long as all that stays in Nelson, you know, maybe the RDCK will fund some more of it. And one of the things, and this is why I don't really understand this program too much that Matt touched on at this
Mhm.
chamber meeting, because he was just doing a really brief overview about
Yeah.
what things are available. But one of the big things in Nanaimo, because that woman came from there that did all of the original studies about
organics,
having
yeah.
the composting site at in Samo and such, is that she said the big change came is when we made ICI
Yeah,
have to sort.
yeah,
We're still in carrot. When they went to stick,
that's when things happen.
that's when things really took off. Then along with everything else that happened, but she was quite clear. She was not, you know, afraid to say that publicly multiple times. It wasn't until they had to, without penalty,
Mhm.
like if they had to get in there or else they had substantive penalties
Yeah,
for bringing organics to the landfill.
yeah,
And so I think that we've had the program now for a while in the regional district, and now we have to look at that next level.
Mhm.
And so we still have to have some carrot, and they still have to monitor and see. And I think that would be what the next year looks like as they bring out if the board
yeah,
decides to go
to go there.
ahead with it.
It seems to me like where I've seen or heard about places where this model is working or getting traction with both the public, but particularly with ICI, is that they understand the range of both incentives, but also the kind of way to think about the system itself that they're participating in. And I feel like there's sometimes a gap there, like a healthy system, a healthy living system that our communities recognizes that its waste is food. Like its waste is, it's our outputs, our inputs to other systems. And unless you have that one-to-one with our waste becoming food for some other part of the system, then you're accumulating a debt, effectively, an environmental debt that's building over time, whether it be at Udashania or our air or water, what have you. And I feel like there's some lessons to be learned as a part of our public education that we can move into. Maybe building off of what they're doing in Nanaimo and on the island, and maybe just kind of importing some of that work. I know we don't want to take on responsibility that should be with the RDCK. And yet I think maybe there's a role for, if we're going to do communication, that we're doing it really well, and that we're not just about repeating the same lines that don't resonate with people. Like, you know, you just need to recycle because it's good for whatever. And because there's a lot of skepticism around this recycling, a lot of the material, people don't know where it goes. Maybe it ends up in China, in some landfill in China.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Councillor Woodward probably wants to address some of your
So-
issues in terms of the fact that he is at that table and this discussion is starting.
This is all at the RD table happening.
Yeah.
Like they are deeply involved in this, have been for a bunch of years. Circular economy, organics removal, culture change locally, best practices, best equipment. It's all happening. They're moving on it, and they got, you know, people who are that's all they're working on down there. They've hired people.
Right.
So I would say, from what I've seen the last bunch of months, is like they are pushing the pedal to the metal. They're trying to get the work done because all of the infrastructure has limited lifespan.
Yeah.
And so we have to slow down on what we're putting into the dump. Most of it shouldn't be there. So I would just say your questions are being pursued and attempted to be answered. And I would say in the next 5 to 10 years, quite a
Start
bit
to see
will
some.
shift.
Right.
So, but it is a 20, I just found out it's like $22 million a year resource recovery that they're spending down there. So it's a massive portion of their budget.
On how successful is that? It seems
It's a,
moving the needle a lot.
it's, yeah.
Yeah.
The intensity, I think, of it is it's a complexity of these distributed transfer stations and trying to streamline that whole process so that there's less orphan dumps, there's less people just dumping in the woods. It's like they're really trying to narrow that all down, but it's a very complex.
It's super complex. I take inspiration from NIMO, and I just have some good friends on council there, and hear the stories about some of their successes. Not to say they've figured it all out, but they do seem to move the needle on some things. And one thing that I remember hearing was that there were certain little shifts, certain mental shifts about the model and how we think about waste or how we think about responsibility, both personal and particularly in the ICI. That for a long time they skated away saying that we don't really have responsibility, that's one of the government's things. I pay them taxes to take care of my stuff. And they did find there's certain little keys that when they turned them, it unlocked all sorts of outcome. And so I think more than ever, learning from these other jurisdictions is gonna be really useful. But again, they're probably doing that, so
They definitely are,
thank you.
they're really focused. I mean, they've hired the people, they've put the money in the budgets. And I think it's really driven from that, what is it gonna be like 20 years down the road, and we need to get ahead of that now.
Yeah.
And so they're working on that in that way.
Councillor Payne.
Yeah, I just wanna acknowledge the Chamber of Commerce's
Mhm.
role in this, because through their Grace Haneka, I can't remember what her exact title is, but she's focused on green and recycling and energy efficiency and all of those things, and bringing those communities together and 3 different sectors. But ICI was the one, when I was at that meeting, it was full. And they were highly motivated. They wanted to participate in a good way. I think that is mainly the culture of Nelson. We want to do things in the right way, but they just didn't have the vehicle. So that's where Matt from the RD said, we'll give some incentives to get these bins so that you can put your organics in there. And from what I've heard so far, it's been really successful. There's a number of restaurants in town who have amalgamated to have.
Unfortunately, Leslie, so before you go any further, that hasn't happened. So this week, the update was that we have this one restaurant in town. Again, it's about space, but the co-op just yesterday, I believe, finally got their organic bin, and LNC has an organic bin.
I was gonna say, I saw photos of LNC getting one. So
Yeah, so LNC is the one, and they have it down because one of the things for businesses uptown is a bit about space, which you heard when we were at that meeting. I was at that one that you were at previously, earlier on this year. And I believe Pitchfork might also have one, but they didn't use I don't know why they didn't use the RD program, which actually offered an incentive rebate to participate. But there's more discussion they still want. I even talked to Ashley at the co-op. They think they may be a bit undersized, but whether or not they would look at a close restaurant, because really that's how it's gonna work in Nelson for the ICI, is for them to sort of co-mingle in terms of organics because of the space constraint. Plus, also you need to make enough of it to have the, you know, 1 yard bin actually holds quite a bit. I mean, maybe it's too small for the co-op, but it's probably too big for, you know, LNC, which, and LNC's is too big. Like they said that they have, but you know, somebody would have to take it down to where they are, but
Seems
Yeah.
to me you just
But I
need
just
to-
want to acknowledge the fact
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
the
Oh, yeah.
chamber is leading this.
For sure.
The business community in all 3 sectors were very incentivized to move forward. So whether it's happening right at this moment, or whether it's in process and some kinks have to be worked out, I think there is a lot of energy
There's a movement.
sure.
on making it happen because it's the right thing to do. And also from the business perspective, what I heard was that they will save money
Yeah,
on this,
yes.
and that is often,
Wow.
not always, the primary motivator when you're running your business. If you can amalgamate with some others to even haul your cardboard away, which I had no idea how much cardboard some of those businesses were dealing with on a regular basis, and it was expensive for them to do that. So I think it's in motion. I'm gonna take a look at Nanaimo, because anywhere we can find anything like a 1% improvement, a 10% improvement that moves the needle is better than where we are. But I agree that many of those things are happening both from the RD, but I thought it was really proactive for the chamber to get in and you know, try and bring all of these people together to make that happen with the groups that I was at, and I went to all three the first time, were highly motivated sectors of the business that want to participate.
Yeah, we just need to make sure that they're also shifting costs to more of a user pay system, because they're not gonna save money if they divert and they just increase taxes, right? That's the challenge, and unfortunately, you know, we've seen in the rural area where they went away, you know, they had grants to go to organics collection, and they, you know, it got voted down, and the directors could have made that a requirement, but they chose not to, so it has to be done through user fees. If you choose not to participate, then you need to pay higher user fees, and when it's on taxation, those that actually reduce don't get any benefit from it, they actually just pay higher taxes.
And so one of the of course issues that I've noticed is that the density of Nelson allows for what's the word I'm looking for? It's like
Economies of scales.
Yeah, economies of scale, and we can actually do it more efficiently here, and they have these huge distances, and so for example, in the cusp, landfill's being closed, and they're gonna truck waste 138 kilometers to Odeshania. They're still gonna have a transfer station up there for recyclables and such, but they're closing that down, and that's happening. There are other ones that are closing down, so they're trying to get it all heading towards one area, and so it's controlled, but these are big contracts, GFL and a few others. I mean, this is a lot of money. So I would say the crux of what they're trying to do is just reduce what we call garbage and try to have all of this stuff being cycled around and reused.
Resource recovery.
Yeah, resource recovery. So just the idea of garbage really does need to go to the dustbin of history.
Ooh, wow.
I really tied it up with a bow, eh? But you know, anyways, it's been very educational being down there for a bunch of months. Sorry, that was a bit of a tangent.
Okay, keep going.
Alright, so in expenses, we see an increase in collection due to inflationary increase on wages, increase in vehicle charges, as well as tipping fees from the RDCK. Capital costs shown here pertain to the purchase of food cyclers for the remaining city residents as per previous financial plans. Again, this annual increase of $25 is to continue our commitment to resource recovery program in whichever way council decides after their presentation on December 2nd.
Councillor Payne.
I don't see capital costs on my slide. Oh, total capital, there, I see it now. Okay, thanks. This wasn't reading fast now.
Do we have the numbers already for what the RDCK is increasing the tipping fees this year? We don't have those budget.
Final ones, but we've seen it 10% the last few years, so.
I thought they notified us that they were looking at the same.
Yeah, they actually sent a letter out with sort of a range, you know, and I think it was 10%.
10%?
But I didn't see an actual final number. But.
Thank you.
So what does this look like for a single family dwelling for 2026? Their annual utility bill, so that's including water and wastewater as well. After the discount if they paid before March 15th, it's $122 per month, which is an increase of $8 per month. And that's, yeah, again, for all three utilities, water, wastewater, and resource recovery.
Any questions, Councillor Payne?
I don't know why I don't know this, so I'm sorry if I'm repeating something, but what's the zero waste line?
Oh, that's the organics team. So that's Lauren, the coordinator that distributes and
Okay,
does all the education.
and I didn't hear why that's down this year. The budgeted and then projected is down significantly, which again, is generally a good thing.
Yeah.
And is that what I'm reading correctly or no?
Yeah, I think that it's from using less casual labor that we expected during some of those waste audits and distribution. There's also some small supplies and evaluation costs that we didn't use the full extent.
I think they did a lot more of that work
In-house.
in-house as opposed to contracting it out, so. that-
And a lot of that is grant funded?
No, we only had 15,000 grant funded and we received that.
So again, just to kind of close out, if you go back to that last slide, we'll be bringing fees and charges bylaw to council at that December 2nd meeting with rates that kind of reflect what you see here for first 3 readings. Again, just timing wise, we want to be able to finalize those and then get those out to residents. What kind of late January-ish is when we send that out? Yep. In order to give people ample time to be able to make that March 15th deadline and get the 10% discount.
Thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? Because they will go away and start drafting these bylaws for us to be able to pass so that we can get the bills out.
And we invited Stephanie here as well so that she can get any kind of communication and messaging out. And I know sometimes the budget meetings don't get as many eyeballs as a regular council meeting, so just want to make sure people are aware of the presentations and where they can find them. And if they have questions, they can contact us.
Councillor Woodward, Councillor Payne.
In the communications, can we always make sure that we're putting like a day rate or a monthly, like that you're paying, for all your services, you're paying $2 a day, just so that people can bring it down to like that really relative level.
Yeah.
For sure.
I think that's a really good way. Maybe just some nice infographics are always great. Thank you.
I love a visual.
The visual is so great. Thank you.
Councillor Payne.
On water and waste recovery, I think you did have it for the secondary suites. Could you explain that for the resource recovery?
It's the same for a secondary suite.
So you pay the 150 or the 175. Okay.
Any further questions? Councillor Tate, Councillor Lockenberg, you all happy with where we are? I think these are modest, these kind of look like sort of just inflationary increases to me versus anything particularly dramatic. And unfortunately, inflation seems to be something that is here to stick. Councillor Payne.
So is that meeting our goals of the, inflationary?
Well, it's caught us up to
has.
to the past 5 years. I think we're looking at a future next 5 years that's gonna be above CPI for rate increases. We have to, if we're gonna make sure that we have, the reserves and resources in place to be able to tackle the infrastructure.
So now, this year we just caught up.
Yes,
And in subsequent years, we will be going above that to decrease the difference between those the actual costs that we expend for these services as opposed to what we're collecting for them.
well, if you look at what the rate increase is this year, it's higher than CPI. I wouldn't expect next year, and I think I put that in the 10-year plan, you're not gonna see a CPI increase next year. We're not gonna be at 2%. We're always gonna be above that for the next little while. We're not trying to increase rates by 30% in a year. We've got a long-term outlook on this, but if CPI is 2%, maybe the rate increases are 5%, just to kind of stay ahead of it and also catch up for the higher cost of infrastructure.
Cause this year for resource recovery, it's above 2%.
Yeah, I'm thinking more that one's a little different because we're actually trying to start a new program. So with water and wastewater, we're trying to rebuild this infrastructure for the next 50 years. This one's slightly different. We're kind of going down a new path and taking care of a problem that honestly 10 years ago, people just came by and picked it all up and chucked it in one spot. We're trying to do better.
Yay.
Yeah.
So we have two other things that we wanna just briefly mention here, just so that there's awareness on council and we're clear we have solid direction from
So just
council.
like we don't need to vote on this, but just I wanna make sure that we're all okay, that we're gonna give them the nod to.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great.
Thank you.
So I wanna thank both of you for the great third quarter update, the review of the water and wastewater, and this finalization of our own resource recovery. So thank you for all that work, and we're all gonna look forward. You can see all the questions and discussion we had. Maybe it'll be a little bit shorter on December the 2nd, cause it'll be in amongst the big packed agenda on that night, but you know, we've definitely got our questions about resource recovery, the double R, whatever that means, and so I wanna thank you for that. And now the city manager has a couple things we need to just discuss.
Cause we're starting early on the second read.
We're starting at 4.
Okay, so everybody take a note of that, 4 o'clock start on December the 2nd. We'll make sure that gets sent out so the other councillors who aren't here will be aware.
I'm putting it in right now.
All right, yeah, there's two things that are delivered by the RDCK that we are involved with trying to understand and advocate for the city. One is on the parks. As you recall, last year we identified that Lakeside was being underfunded over the last 5 years, and you know, at the same time, rural parks were the contribution to rural parks was grown quite substantially over that same period. You know, they have done some analysis. They have invited staff to present on what the cost of Lakeside is at this time. They seem to have some quasi policy that says they're happy if they fund this at 75 to 85% of the cost, whereas they expect the Nelson residents to fund rural parks at 100%. So basically we want to go with a strong message that you know, fairness means that all parks that are regionally significant are funded at 100%, not, you know, Lakeside should not be funded at a lesser amount just because. I guess.
Well, that same report identifies Lakeside and the playing fields as being a regional park, and then goes on to say that they're recommending it's funded at 75 to 85% of what regional parks are, which is one of the questions we'll sort of have.
And we'll also be asking, you know, again, the 100% that Nelson is funding rural parks includes capital, not just the operating side. Have only been asking for the operating side on Lakeside to date, but one of the asks will be to ask them to contribute to the upgrades that need to be done at the bathhouses down at, or the washroom facilities down at, and changing facilities down at Lakeside Park, so that will be an ask as well. And I guess we wanna go with a firm voice that, you know, that's the expectation of council, and an alternative would be for the city to manage its own parks and fund its own parks and not fund rural parks. When we first kind of made this deal, we were sort of swapping equal checks back and forth, and you know, we don't get involved with the operations of rural parks or the decisions, you know, directly on expansion or those other decisions that are being made on the table. I do know that we do have a rep there, but and they're not involved in the operations and capital side of our parks, and we don't necessarily need someone else to be involved in those decisions. So we wanna float that as an alternative as well. We would, I think they suggest we made, that we all contribute to the rail trail, which makes sense. We have committed to paying off the debt on the Cottonwood Park purchase. And, there might be some, like we have done for emergency management when we got out of that service and ran that ourselves. We left some money in the RD to do more regional planning. So on the park side, that could be a model as well, as to look at, be involved more on that regional planning, and they would take into account the parks that are in Nelson as part of that larger, where the parks in the area, who they're serving, et cetera. So again, we just want, we're gonna say that we want your endorsement that you'd be open to that as an alternative to them funding us at 100%.
Councillor Tate, then Councillor Locke.
So I think I partially understand. I'm curious, unless I've misunderstood, why one of the alternatives wouldn't be, okay, 75-80 is getting funded by the RD for Lakeside and the playing fields. We could do 70, we could do 20 out there. That doesn't sound like one of the options. It sounds like either get this up to 100 or we're out, as opposed to, if you're saying that 75-80 is the right amount, then we're gonna say 20-25 is our right amount. Curious.
Why would we say we'd only fund rural parks to 20 to 25%?
Or maybe 75 to 85. We would only fund rural parks 75 to 85 is maybe.
Yeah, I think
Is maybe what I mean. Okay, that's
We're looking for parity.
Yeah.
So however whether it's 75, 85 or 100 and 100, the message really is, right now they're paying 75 and 85, and to be fair, that doesn't include capital, so it's even less than that. And we're paying 100 of rural parks. So there's no parity there, right? We're paying more, so whether it ends on either side of the coin.
Okay.
Good point, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting, approach that, I hadn't thought of.
Oh, yay.
I don't know how, they
I don't know
normally
how
have a
they would do that in
service and they apportion that service based on assessed value, so I don't know how they would kind of do that.
Oh, it's just one more factor. You just
Yeah.
That's
a
the-
0.8 in there.
That's always the tricky part, is that service based on assessment, so.
Yeah, and I think council's aware that, the 75 or 85% we're getting, the city's paying 50% of that, right?
I get that.
50% of that's coming from.
It's a bit confusing,
Right?
Yeah.
because we are the people paying the thing, but then we're paying the thing.
And that's why when he talks about swapping checks,
Yeah.
that we've come very close to the fact that our portion is like, I remember a few years back when I was on the RD board, it was like, we were getting $350 and we were giving them back $350, what was that all about? Like, it didn't make much sense. Councillor Lochtenberg.
One of the complaints that they make is that they are contributing to the city parks without any oversight or say in how those parks are managed, of course.
And then same thing goes.
Vice versa.
Yeah.
But what it makes, we do have some say in that we participate in the service, so Councillor Page does have a say, so we have some voice there, whereas they have no voice here. Would it make sense to offer Tom or some, we'll set up a committee, an oversight committee that doesn't have any governance power, but at least he's in the loop and he's hearing about the rationale or decision making?
And that is us, that is part of why we're coming annually, to let them know. And if you look at the costs of how we managed Lakeside over this 7-year period, we've managed it very well, and costs are not.
No question about that there, but I think it's as a way of unlocking some of the resistance, because you can make the argument and just lean on that argument that, we don't have any decision and you guys are over investing in your parks.
Yeah.
Whereas if we could say, well, actually you have a chance, both we invite you regularly to these meetings, we have set up a little kind of oversight or review committee potentially, and you have you have some way of giving direct input, some mechanism, so that we essentially blunt that criticism. But also, maybe, you never know, collective intelligence, there might be some good ideas that come out of their participation, or they might never show up to a meeting. But at some point, I get the argument. I get the argument, and it's just, when you hear it on the face of it, it does make sense, like, the city's over investing in the parks, and we're being asked to participate in that even more so, and we have no say in those costs or any cost control, whereas on the RD side, we're really trying to keep costs down in how we manage the parks. And again, the argument being that urban parks are very different from regional parks, get that. But again, it's kind of a trust us dynamic here. And I can see that being part of the source of the.
I think as, that is why they've invited.
Yes. I
invited
would say
us
that
part of
checks that box, the fact that we go there, present the budget, explain what work we plan on the parks. They do have an opportunity at that time to say, we don't wanna fund this, or, that type of thing, I suppose, or
And
ask questions or give feedback.
Do they, is that?
Well, we've only done it once. And, at that time, we were asking for an increase and didn't really receive that, so we're trying
I
again
think
this year,
there's-
but.
So maybe we're
I think
making
there's
the necessary steps
Yeah, I think there's a
blunt
base,
that criticism.
base budget, that process is the same process you have here at council. It's
Yeah.
not like we have a committee for
We don't have a
council
committee, we don't have a committee to get into the operations of how we take care of our
Yeah.
parks.
I know, but we have effective committees or commissions on various things, whether it be how we manage our rec center, right, the services. And this is kind of a quasi-service in the sense that we are asking them to participate in a special Nelson service. It's in effect the analog to what a regional district service would be, but
It
on
is
the
a
regional district
service.
side, no, I'm talking about Lakeside. I'm talking about there is a contribution to us that has no governance controls within it. And so the argument is very easy to make, which is we're giving you money and we have no control over how that money's spent. There's no mechanism for control. If we've started the process by saying, well, we at least present to you and consult, that's a great step. But the fact that we've only just started it, we've only done it once, you can start to see why that argument has had power in the past. And going forward, if we want to continue to improve this relationship and get to parity, we probably have to do a little bit more of that.
And that's why I would say, let's just manage our own parks, and then we
Yeah, I
don't
mean, great,
need another
Sure.
committee, and we don't need,
sure.
let the parties that run those parks make the decisions on those parks, and if we wanna have the best lakeside park in the world, we can do that, and we don't need to have somebody else decide
that's
whether
the
that
best-
makes sense.
Yeah, if that's the best decision, then we should just do it.
Yeah.
Like if it's clearly the best approach, let's just do it. If it's not the best
And
approach,
we
then we're gonna
trust-
need something else. And I think
Yeah.
this argument about
Yeah, And
governance.
we
of-
trust them that they can manage Tagum and
Sure,
Pulpit,
yeah, yeah.
and
If that's the best decision, we should just make
They don't need us to tell them how to manage those things. We trust them, and they need to trust that we will manage our parks and make them great for the region, but no, I hear your point.
Councillor Woodward, then Councillor Tate.
So, I mean, often at an RD meeting, they'll have, if the mayor shows up, they'll give freedom of the floor.
Sure, yeah.
Or councillor shows up, they'll give freedom of the floor. I mean, if we're having like a special workshop, I mean, and Tom and Cheryl have showed up and they get freedom of the floor. So I think there are places where they can insert opinion. But as the CAO was saying, it's like we have to also trust each other. And I think, part of that is, having building good, community at the board table, but also just like it takes time to build that trust. But I see, just in being there in a little bit, I see more sharing happening. I see there's a staff that are trying to do good regional work. So I think the opportunities are there. And it's not like we're trying to be like hidden or anything.
Yeah, and having been the alternate director for 4 years and sitting at that table quite a bit, I've had these conversations and I recognize the argument that they're making, which is you don't make contributions without some sort of governance to it. Otherwise, it's just bound to eventually somebody's gonna use that as an excuse to complain or to try to reduce their tax burden. Why not? Why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying.
And I don't
Like,
think there's, there is no, we just fund you what you show up with. We came and said, we've just doubled Lakeside, then, they would go, oh, hold on a sec.
yeah, exactly.
So can I understand what you could potentially be proposing, which is to have the city of Nelson pull out of a particular service? Okay, gotcha. And there's probably some rules around how you have to do that.
Well, we'd
It's just a proposal, I know, or an idea
Well,
in
we'd
the air.
probably stay in it to a limited, same as we did with emergency management. So we are part of the service, but only at a fixed amount.
Okay, effectively defunding regional parks by close to 50%.
Well, they're giving us
350.
350 as well, right?
Yeah, like our 50%, 350 comes back to us, so they wouldn't be cutting that check anymore.
Gotcha.
So I think they did some analysis on it, what was it, 170,000 or
170,
something
yeah.
was sort of the net loss that they would have to make up with the other remaining.
Okay, that's helpful to me, thanks.
But you're right, Councillor Lochtenberg, to bring this up, even, you're just sort of stating, hey, here's a potential argument that could come up, because I'm pretty confident that will be brought up at the next meeting, so I appreciate us kind of hashing it out now as opposed to on the moment trying to come up with an answer or something.
And is there no, sorry to interrupt, is there no like MOU in place with regards to those moments for feedback or pullback or whatever? Is there some kind of agreement?
No, it's just
Okay,
a
so maybe even that, like maybe not a new committee, but maybe some defined, documented pullback points.
Yeah, there should be a service agreement. What are we agreeing, what are
I
we,
like that,
what are we agreeing to provide for that amount?
not another committee though.
Right?
Yeah. And just, I mean, parks, these are always, there's some that are really touchy to talk about being in, being out, being nowhere. But the thing is that I have to say that over the years of watching this process go, is if there was one service that I think isn't, to be honest, handled very well by the regional district, probably besides waste and things we've invested in over the last 50 years, is the issue around this parks service and regional parks. Because I believe, it's my opinion only, not the city's opinion, my opinion, is that regional parks should be regional. And the problem is the RDCK, there's 15 park services. And they really should be, regional parks should be the regional district. Not, I've got 3 parks, I don't wanna be in yours, my parks don't have bathrooms, your parks have bathrooms, they cost more money to have a long drop in the park and it has to be serviced, and it's like, no. And I know that there's been a creep. There's been a small creep towards trying to contemplate regionalization of park services all together. So where Nelson fits in that, I'm not sure, but I think it's ridiculous that I&J have a service agreement for 3 parks. And we have this crazy service agreement with Salmo, Hands, E and F, and the city of Nelson, and we're a service. And then
Salmo,
Caslo
Hands.
has 3 parks up at their end that are a service. No, a park is a park, and parks are, to me, parks are those, kind of like libraries, they're those public, free spaces, and we use the community's money in whatever way to allow those to remain free and open and accessible to everyone, right? And to me, it's tomfoolery to have these separate, and they're all meeting, and when you think about, what's the cost of having a meeting? They're meeting then, they're meeting there, they're meeting there, so it's the one where one service would be fantastic.
Okay, and
Councillor Payne.
good on
I just want to
parks?
quickly ask, so Council Gar has the same relationship with the RDCK, the 75% for their,
No, that's a totally different service.
That's a different service.
that,
Yeah.
it's,
No,
I
it's
don't
not
think,
consistent.
I
The
haven't heard that.
75-85% thing just was essentially
That's special.
suggested in a recent report that
It's-
staff brought to
it's-
the.
They did that because when they first, the 350 in the beginning was 85%.
Yeah.
It's declined to 75%. So now they
Yeah,
said, oh,
that part I
that's
get.
an
A reasonable
acceptable rate.
So they just
There's
sort
no
of
math,
adapted it.
there's no rationale on it.
So is Castlegar in the same
I don't
declining
know.
percent?
I don't-
That's a different, see, like, who knows what they do? They might not
They
have
have more
anything that they
regional
can
parks.
classify as regional parks
Yeah.
within the city, right?
If
So that's that whole thing, is it gets all,
Muddy.
it's all different, so there is no comparator, and that's
Yeah.
why,
There's no
when you think about a
consistency.
park,
Yeah, I'm trying to,
There's no consistency.
There's no
It's just-
consistency.
It's just where the numbers were and they took those numbers and said, oh, here's a decent range, so they can say, oh, well, we're paying you 75%, you're still in the right range.
and are there comparators in other regional districts that,
They pay 100%, yeah.
so that's the comparator.
So the other one is transit, they've done work trying to come up with new allocation formulas that they sent us a bylaw that they want council's consent, we got it last week and wanted us to somehow get it on the agenda. They have not provided any, they initially didn't provide any background of where the numbers came from, so we've asked for that, we've got some information. But we're not, until we get that, we don't feel comfortable bringing that to council when we don't know where the numbers have come from. There's some things that don't make sense. There's some allocation formula, for example, the connector between Castlegar and Nelson, they're allocating only 67% of, if you're in Castlegar, you only pay 60, they weight the population and say, we're gonna weight Castlegar's population 67%, but Nelson's gonna be 100%. And the service is no different. We take the 99 to Selkirk and the 98 to Castlegar. They take the 98 to Selkirk and the 99 to Nelson. So the service is exactly the same. It's just where the two buses meet. So there's some questions around the rationale for some of this. So anyway, we need to tell them that we don't have the information and council is not in a position to make that decision until the full information is provided and that we can provide it to council to make an informed decision. So we just wanted to let you know that one's also up in the air. Fire, we're still waiting on, we've been working with them for 2 years on a new fire agreement. We're still waiting on that one. Recycling, we've had some meetings, that's been 10 years plus, that, we got it resolved and now they've come back on a trying to look at it completely different again. So there's definitely some areas that we're still trying to resolve there.
Councillor Tate.
At what point, or historically, or from your experience, when does it make sense to say, okay, we need maybe an external negotiator or something to wrap this up? Because now we're just spending like years and years and years, and the gap that's supposed to be made up or is overpaid or whatever just continues to grow as like a deficit.
Well, fortunately, fire, they had agreed to fund it at the newer rates, right?
Yeah, created a model, which is basically the standard model that you'd have as a cost sharing agreement between a municipality and the regional district for fire services. Here's the total cost of the service, and here's the weighted assessed values and just proportionate that way. It's pretty standard. There's still some pushback on how much capital they'll want to fund or be open to funding, and it's really driven by things like we have a new fire hall that we're trying to build or a ladder truck, and that sort of frightens them a little bit about what is that going to look like for them 5 years from now, etc. So that's kind of where we're at. But as far as the base model, that's agreed to. Just some of these other capital pieces. So I don't know. I feel like we're close on that one. That I think, I've given them everything that I can give them. It's been sitting there for probably a year, and I keep following up, and I just don't get a lot back. So yeah, I think it's, maybe the sense of urgency isn't there that we would have on this side.
Okay, and for the recycling question?
I think
How long, at what point do we say, oh, we need an arbitrator or mediator or something?
Well, you can ask for a service review. it'll take 2 years and has no real teeth in it.
I'm asking for something with teeth. How do you get the teeth part?
It's nothing with teeth, and the only teeth.
Oh, really?
The only
Oh,
teeth
interesting.
you have is what council did a number of years ago, say we're not
We held
sending you
back
a
some money.
check for that service.
Goodness. Okay.
Service review is your
Tool.
tool.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
And so at what point would staff be recommending a service review then?
Yeah. would,
Is there a precipice for that? Is there a tipping point?
We've done service reviews in the past, Cascar's done service reviews in the past, the whole recreation part went through a service review that didn't result in a very good outcome. It resulted in narrowing the service as opposed to recognizing that the service was actually larger than where it started, so yeah, there's no great solutions to, we're I think we're working through some of these things, but it comes down to cost. People that aren't paying now aren't putting their hand up to say, even if this is equitable, we still don't like to pay more. That's really the bottom line.
And I think the size of some of these services are a challenge. I mean, in terms of cost, yes, perhaps say waste might come ahead of something else, but I think that we're trying to move a little bit on where we are with the parks. And I think that because we've started some work there, I think that work needs to sort of continue, and it's a smaller service with a lesser budget, and it has less tentacles, so to speak. I also know that, and have heard that there's some movement on perhaps, this be a big wish, that again, waste has problems because we have 3 waste services. People put their increases in for what the charges are for going across the scales at different times of the year in their budget process. So the East Kootenai, the east side of the regional district here does it sort of on a different days, and people have to do all this separate work. And again, is to try to look at maybe leaving that east resource recovery as its own thing, because they work quite well over there, but that west and central look at some kind of merger, considering we're both using the same landfill. Like we all use Udashenya, so if we're using Udashenya, why are we not looking at sort of amalgamating issues? But then of course, the HB tailings pond always becomes and whether or not, in fact, really, the regional district board, the day took on that liability, and really that should actually be pulled out at this point as a legacy issue, and all of the regional districts should be paying for it, because it was all of the directors that voted to support it. And if we could get that out of the resource recovery budgeting process, would go a long way in terms of costs, and then that cost would be spread, because that's an ongoing, that will never be off the books, ever.
Like a cemetery.
Like a cemetery. So those are the kind of things that, like that one, like waste has a lot of legs on that octopus. It's got more than 8.
Okay, so that's where we are with those few things.
Sorry, Mayor, I have to.
Yep, everybody has to go. There's people have, there's some celebrations of life that people have to attend to at noon, and so, anything else, City Manager?
Can I just ask a quick procedural question? So before I was on council, I would look at the agendas that they came out, and I thought, oh, what's interesting for me, and will I attend, or follow that? So when we introduce items like this, will they be listed under late items when this agenda is updated? Or how does the public know what we've been discussing?
This was sort of a last minute thing. We tend to.
So would that normally be under late items? That's what I'm trying to understand. Are these?
It was budget related, I guess, is why.
Okay, so not outside of the scope of the budget conversation that we had today?
Yeah.
Okay,
I assume this is all recorded and everything, right? So,
It'll be in the minutes.
Yeah, but we often don't get the minutes
Until
for
after the fact.
some time, so if you're curious about this particular topic, you're not gonna know for a while. Okay,
And if it's a late item introduced at the meeting, then you're not gonna see it anyway, right?
we don't update the agenda to reflect late items? I thought we did.
Late items they come out after
After.
the
They
original
would- they'd
agenda,
be
but
in
they
the-
still
Exactly.
attach here.
Yeah, they're
It's still
attached.
attached here and
Yeah.
it says updated, so we know. Okay, just trying to understand the procedures. Always a bit of a mystery for me. Thank you.
Could be worthwhile to consider having a verbal report when we have budget meetings, because then it gives a little bit of space for that.
yeah, that's cool.
You could put in like a CAO report or a general manager's report pertaining to like,
Budget things, yeah.
but I would say we pretty much run budget, there's always, because of this interweaving of so many of the things we do, and particularly around resource recovery, that there's definitely budgetary items to consider there when we're looking at this and our costs that the city has to pay, so.
The parks and transit, they're certainly part of the budget, but they're
Yeah.
outside of what we had on the agenda today.
Yep.
We're trying to.
Move to adjourn.
After it.
Okay, moved by Councillor Tate, seconded by Councillor Woodward. All those in favor? And that carries. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, finance. Thank you, comms. Fine comms.
Thank you, everyone.